Hey, I'm Anfa. In this short live stream, I'm going to cover notable software releases of 2022's January. It's January 19th, and that means we have had quite a lot of releases because there's something called the Quarterly Release Pact, which is basically the open source audio software developers have agreed together to release software more often and to bunch it up in packages, kind of like, yeah, to release together on the 15th, like around the 15th of the first month of every quarter. And that was a few days ago. So we had a few interesting releases, and I'm going to cover that right now. Alrighty. First up, I want to talk about the DPF Plug-ins 1.5. DPF is Distro Plugin Framework. This is a toolkit for developing audio plugins, open source and cross-platform plugins created by FolkTX, who is also going to come back with another bunch of releases after this one. And he writes, it was released on January 16th. Hello everyone, a new release of DPF plugins is here. DPF plugins is a collection of DPF-based plugins, including Cars, Mverb, and Nakobi. This is mostly a bug fix release, keeping up with the cool kids for regular releases. I think he's talking about the Quarterly Release Pact. Changelog, initial experimental VST3 support. At bottom right, resize handle in GL bars and Pro-Am and need in plugin formats that can do host-side resizing. Some plugin GUIs can use Cairo instead of OpenGL if OpenGL is not available at build time. Standalones no longer require jack, instead detecting at runtime if it's available. Standalones will now use RT audio for native audio device access in case jack is not available. Pro-Am now ships with optional vendor libproject-M in case it is not available in a system library. Pro-Am now sets up and uses OpenGL free context instead of OpenGL 2 forward compatibility mode, fixing usage on macOS and Windows. Fix model about dialogues, fix more high DPI related issues, fix OpenGL context swap on a GUI deletion need on host using OpenGL. So a bunch of fixes and compatibility issues are removed and lots of that stuff. Yeah. I'm gonna link all of that in the video description or the live stream description after the fact. I'm gonna link all these pages I'm reading off. So that's DPF and the plugins based on that. Next we have GlassCoder, which is, my notes say it's a minimalist audio encoder for Icecast and Shoutcast streaming servers, as well as HTTP live streaming, HLS. And this seems to be released as a part of the Rivendell, like on behalf of the Rivendell audio community. And I think that is a great I think this is a great opportunity to talk about Rivendell. Rivendell is an open source radio automation system. It's a whole bunch of programs that work together, and you can basically make a radio station with this, like a fully professional one that operates 24/7 with, you know, all the program cards and like jingles and live auditions, and like it's mind-bogglingly complex. So if you ever wanted to make a radio station, or maybe just a very nice internet radio, well, Rivendell has got you covered. By the way, if these pages look a little bit weird, it's because I'm changing the colors of them so they are dark, so they don't hurt my eyes and yours. But that means that some colors don't match perfectly. Okay, I'm gonna read the chat before I move on. Reread says hello. Alberto Velez says wow. Caesar CJ says hi Anfa. Hi Caesar. Reread says I'm getting illegal operations on my Windows Vista home computer. Is this the group support for that? Sure. Anfa, are you using Windows 95 first edition or second edition? I use the third edition. VIP only. For realsies, I use... okay. Wait. I'm gonna do it. For realsies, I use... Bam, bam, bam! Arch Linux. Sci-Fucked says 98 SE is like my family. Dragon Actual says good evening. Good evening. Alrighty, moving on to Laborejo. Actually, I'm going to turn off the colors inversion because this side doesn't work well with that. Next up is Laborejo Software Suite. Laborejo Software Suite is comprised of 4 programs, and the most widely known one is Petronio, which is an easy-to-use pattern-based MIDI sequencer. And this one, Petronio and Fluyaho, are now feature complete. So they have been pushed to the state of having everything that the creator wanted. And that was updated precisely on January 15th. So right at the spot of quarterly release pact. Yes, so Petronio, the easy-to-use pattern-based MIDI sequence editor, is now feature complete. I have made a track with that. I think it was called Halloweener. It was part of the Libre Music Challenge that is being organized inside of my community. You can check that out on chat.anfa.xyz. Actually, I can just jump right there. Oh no, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna open a private window. I'm gonna show you what I've done today. So this is all a bit of a break. I have added external authentication, so we can log in with GitHub, GitLab, Google account. Facebook doesn't work and Twitter does work and Codeberg doesn't work. And once you do that, you can write in here. And even if you don't do that, you can read stuff in here. Like about this live stream I've just posted, and I'm doing it right now, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, that's what you get. So in this community, there's also a what is if we hit this little home or search. I think if I go Libre Music Challenge, you will find here people are organizing monthly challenges to do music with open source software, which is motivating and inspiring people to discover new tools and make some music. And sometimes when I can, I take part in that. A track I've made called Pipewire was actually made for that. Okay, going back to Laborejo. Yeah, so Petronio is a MIDI sequencer, and probably the best thing about it is that it's really simple. So it could be very nice for learning, for teaching basics of sequencing MIDI. The problem is that it doesn't produce any sound on its own. So you need to use something else like Fluyaho, which is a SF2 sound font instrument player. And I believe these were probably made to work together. As you can see, you can select channels, MIDI channels, and assign instruments from an SF2 file. And yep, there's also other programs. There is the eponymous Laborejo, which is a music notation program sequencer. It's for the classically trained people or those who want to explore the classical way of doing MIDI. It's quite simple. It has a Lillipond in the menu. I wonder what that means. Because Lillipond is another MIDI sequencer in the classical style. And there is Agardeo, which is probably one of the more interesting things, because this is something I could even find useful. Agardeo is a music session manager. What it does is it lets you create projects and then add a bunch of, this is awesome that the author created these GIFs or GIFs, and so you can really see what the program is. Like, that's awesome. That's so much better than screenshots, and like, wow, I never saw anybody do that. So you can add a bunch of programs that are not plugins and connect them together, save that in Agardeo, and then you can load it up and it will open just like a project in Ardor or any other DAW. So this is, if you prefer a very modular workflow, this is one of the tools that you can enjoy. But it's also told to be a graphical user interface for NSM, which stands for Non-Session Manager, or for the newer fork, which is like improving on the base one, it's called New Session Manager. There was a bit debacle about that, but well, New Session Manager is the new standard. Yeah, and you can check out more on laborejo.org. Of course, I'm gonna link that in the live stream's description. I'm gonna read the chat for a bit. Whoa, there's a lot of stuff to read. Dragon Actual says, so much snow as usual where I am. Nice. Falter, good evening, Anfa. I had a question about ZenFusion. Why aren't there any good drum kits? Because I didn't publish any. Well, you know, if you can work with any piece of software that can run other plugins like Geonkick, I would recommend you go for Geonkick, because making drums in Geonkick is actually way easier than in ZenFX. I didn't make really drum kits in ZenFX because you can't mix the individual elements after the fact. All you can get out of the drum kit from a ZenFX patch is the stereo mix of your drum kit, which isn't very useful if you want to do advanced stuff, and you can't do everything in Zen. Like, you can, but there's limiting and not convenient. In Geonkick, you can make 16 drum kit elements and have them all, everyone output a stereo pair, so you can mix them in Ardor or in Carla or whatever with, like, you know, full power of everything you need. But that's not possible in ZenFX. That's why I don't really make ZenFX drum kits. Nuno Ferreira says, learned much from you. Big thanks. You're welcome. Thank you. Meat Puppet says, will you cover Logic in this video? Logic isn't open source software, so no. Imalton says, I just learned Fedora. Jam exists. Have you heard of it before? Fedora Spin for music production. Fedora Jam. I haven't tried that. Maybe I should see what is it. Good to know. Faster Clocker says, hey, he'll definitely cover a closed source pieces of software, not on Linux, Meat Puppet. Oh yeah, that's about Logic. No. The focus of this channel is free and open source software. And mostly Linux, but a lot of what I do and cover is also available on our platforms. Braulio Castellanos says, hey Anfa, how is it going with Pipewire? Are there improvements? There are improvements. I'm currently using Pipewire. So today I learned that a recent version of Wire Plumber, which is a program that manages connection for Pipewire, have been shipped with a bug, and it made all audio on my system just be non-working because it didn't make any connections, because I used the Pro mode in my sound interfaces, and that Pro mode was broken and wouldn't do any connections, so I had to install Wire Plumber from Git using AOR because I run Arch Linux, and that was just a few keyboard strokes away, thankfully, and then things started working again. So, well, I'm using Pipewire to make this live stream right now, so I guess it is working, as you can see. Even though I've been on Jack and I've been switching back to Jack, I've made a video about that, didn't I? I did. Aaron, recommendations for free and open source plugins? Watch any of my videos? Like, depending on what you want. Surge is a great synthesizer, but we'll cover that. Rafał Krupa says, what is a good guitar software other than Guitarix with other amps, sounds, effects, etc.? A nice plugin is called Swanky Amp. There's also Kapitanov plugin pack. There's quite a few nice. There's also Chow Tape. Chow Tape is also good for saturation. And they have like a distortion pedal emulation, which uses AI and I don't know, crazy stuff. There's a lot of open source guitar effect plugins that can sound awesome. No, nothing from Xfair is open source, so I don't cover that, and it's not in my interest. OTT. Yeah, I'm not gonna cover OTT because it's not open source. However, Vital or Vitalium come with a multiband upwards-downwards compressor, which is pretty much like OTT, and this is open source. Not open source, but it's free. To be precise, it's freeware. Free software. The naming is really problematic. I made a whole video explaining the difference between free software and freeware. So what most people call free is not really free software, it's freeware, which lets you do nothing but get the software and run it, but doesn't give you any other freedoms like freedom to study the software, improve it, etc. Yeah, I can link a video of mine. If you search on YouTube for software freedom explained, you'll probably find my video. I think it's really well made and it gets the point across. Falter says, Anfa, have you ever thought about making a singing synth like Vocaloid or Alter Ego that's free? I am a vocalist and I don't really need that because I can just sing. And I've recently stumbled upon a free and open source vocal synth, but there aren't any truly free vocalists for it. If someone would like to make a vocalist for that, I could try and provide you with some source material. I could try and sing some stuff so we can work on this. So Alright, I'm gonna skip the chat for now and go on with the releases. The next stuff on my list is releases of Qtractor and the V1 suite, also known as Q stuff. So RNCBC, also known as Rui Nuno Capella, he's a developer who's been making Qtractor, which is a free and open source DAW, not entirely unlike Ardor, but different. I have never really managed to learn Qtractor, mostly because when I first stumbled upon it, it didn't really resonate with me, and I just learned Ardor, and then I didn't ever feel the need to drop Ardor and learn Qtractor. Oh, by the way, the instrumental version of the Pipewire song is playing at the background right now. Pipewire. Never mind. GMDC says, I love you, Anfa. Oh, thank you. That's very nice. Alrighty, so Qtractor. What is new in Qtractor? Hopefully fixed an old MIDI off timing bug noticeable only when exporting. Track export tracks audio on larger buffer sizes. Clip file loop set menu command is now a toggle. Fixed problems with punch in, punch out, and loop recording being lost when stopped the playhead right after the end between the loop start and punch in points, even though at least one cycle or take is through. Dropped auto tools, that's for some compilation build system. A more verbose warning question is issued, blah blah blah. Fixed potential crash and session closer application exit. Crashing when you close the program is not that bad, right? Qtractor is a audio MIDI multi-track sequencer application written in C++ with the Qt framework. The target platform is Linux, where the jack audio connection kit for audio and the advanced Linux architecture for MIDI are the main infrastructure to evolve as a fairly featured Linux desktop audio workstation GUI, especially dedicated to the personal home use studio. Yeah, if Ardor doesn't tickle you fancy, then try Qtractor and see. Maybe it will feel better for you. Nika says, who mentioned Pipewire? Okay, and apart from Qtractor, Rui Nuno Capella also makes a bunch of plugins, which are called V1 Suite, and version 0.9.24 was released on January 9th. And there's Synth V1 is a polyphonic subtractive synthesizer. Sample V1, a polyphonic sampler synthesizer. I really like the sampler. Drum Kit V1 is another drum kit sampler. And Pad V1, a polyphonic additive synthesizer. This is kind of like AdSynth in ZFX, I believe. Are also now being released as the second batch of the so-called Q stuff, Winter 2020 season. Oh. I clicked something. Okay, nothing bad. A big problem I have with these plugins is that they use the Qt framework in plugins. And for example, Ardor does not allow these plugins to work because it also uses Qt framework, I believe. No, it uses GTK free, I think. And the problem is that this creates plugins should be self-contained, and the V1 Suite plugins unfortunately depend on external user interface libraries, and that creates conflicts with the DAW. So in some plugin hosts, these plugins will just not load. For example, wait a minute. I can load a Synth V1 instance in here, in Carla, and can open it and it works. But if I try to do this in Ardor, it just fails. And this is problematic. I've tested it and Synth V1 loads in ZRhythm because ZRhythm uses Carla or Carla Rack. So that works. Of course, it's going to work in Qtractor because it's from the same maker, but it does not work in Ardor unless you install the Synth V1 plugin and Ardor from your software repositories, which were compiled against the same versions of the graphical toolkits library, so there isn't a conflict. But then when I use unofficial Ardor builds, I often have weird issues. So I usually just use the official builds, and in these official builds, these plugins don't work, which is a very big loss because especially Sample V1, we don't really have something that does what it does, and it does as well. Like, it's a real shame. I really wish that Rui Nuno Capella could somehow resolve this. Maybe, I don't know, maybe just provide these plugins statically built so they don't depend on external libraries. I know it will make them larger, but it also will make them available for many more people. And, you know, maybe he doesn't want to do that because, well, he has his own DAW, so, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I would really like these plugins to be possible to use in Ardor without caring about some software dependencies. It's not nice. Matthias Sterle says, hi Anfa. Have you ever made a video about Rose Garden? I have not. Rose Garden is a pretty old piece of software for creating MIDI sequences. Actually, it's a DAW. I think it may even be actively developed still. So it has a very long, how do you call this, legacy. So like it comes straight from the 90s as far as I'm concerned. It like just looks like the 90s. I never got into it. Fishy Pug Bruh. I used Sample V1 and Drum K V1, but Synth V1 does not work. Paulo Seraphim says, hi Anfa, greetings from Brazil. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Greetings, you're welcome, thanks. Rafał Krupa says, hey Anfa, is there a way to open Guitarix as a plugin effect per track inside Ardor, or do I have to always use Scarlett to route the sound to Ardor? If yes, can you show how to do it? You know, Guitarix should come with a set of plugins, and then you can just load these plugins on your tracks. If I go and add the plugin, if I can go GX, and you can see I have a bunch of Guitarix plugins available that just installed with Guitarix itself. And, you know, you can just drop this on your tracks in Ardor or anywhere and use that. You don't need to load the Guitarix program standalone application. You can do this, which is much simpler. And of course, unless you want to use something like Patronio. No. Wait, Patronio is the sequencer. What's... Agardeo. Yes. Unless you want to use Agardeo to, you know, load Guitarix and Ardor in a session together, which you could do, and that would already make things easier for you, but you don't need to because you can use Guitarix processors as plugins inside Ardor directly. And if in your Linux distribution these plugins don't come bundled with Guitarix, then just search your package manager for Guitarix plugins and you will find that, I am sure. What more? Let me look at my notes. Oh, I was reading chat, okay. GMDC says, I bought M Audio Oxygen Pro Mini. I am trying to map MIDI learn the controls to Ardor. Seems like it's not yet optimized working properly. Do you have a tutorial on that? I do have the tutorial part of my 2-hour masterclass on Ardor MIDI. If you search for Ardor MIDI Masterclass on YouTube, you'll find that. And there's a long list of chapters. Somewhere in there, you'll see MIDI control surfaces or something like that. And I explain how do you bind MIDI controls. So, yeah. I have an M Audio Oxygen 49 Mark IV. Yeah, Mark IV, and you know, the problem with Ardor is that it's not really the MIDI learns functionality that lets you bind MIDI controls to Ardor controls like faders or buttons is extremely minimalistic, and I covered that in my MIDI masterclass. It's very, very limited. So what it's good for is mostly just if you want to record automation onto your tracks, but I would definitely not rely on that for a live performance. That would be catastrophic. Because, yeah, I would definitely want to use something like Carla, which is what I'm using right now to process all the audio. And like, this is my live system layout. This is what is going on right now when I talk to you. And actually all my audio is processed in another Carla Patch Bay plugin. And this is where the magic happens. This is where my voice goes through all the processing and everything gets mixed. And I can do weird stuff like this. Woo, yeah. And if you please. Yes, that's all done in here in Carla. And you can see I've done all that because I have I can do all that because I have MIDI control coming, input from my MIDI keyboard coming into Carla and processed with various plugins, filtered and assigned to, for example, like this noise repellent plugin. You can just take any control, do MIDI learn, move your control, and you can also like then assign like ranges. It's much better than Ardor. Still not perfect, but much, much better. So I would not recommend to like rely on Ardor's functionality as it is now. Maybe Ardor 7 will improve on that. I don't know. It would be awesome, but it's not what we have right now. Though I didn't check the latest nightly builds in a while, so maybe there's already something new, and I just don't know. Dan Video says, I use Sample V1 a lot. Works fine with Ardor compiled for OpenSUSE. Yeah, that's the thing. If you have Ardor and Sample V1 compiled against the same versions of like Qt and GTK libraries, I think it's... I don't know. It must be Qt. Must be Qt because there's Q in the name, and like that's a common way of naming things. You name things after what graphical user interface toolkit you're using. If you're using the shit, oh no, that wrong button. Shit. Graphical user toolkit, then you're calling your software shit software. That's the rule of open source. Any plans on supporting Pipewire? Oh, let's see. I don't think Pipewire needs to be supported directly. Yeah, Pipewire is a drop-in replacement. All the software I'm running right now, like Carla and OBS, they don't talk to Pipewire as Pipewire. They talk to Pipewire because it presents itself as Jack or Pulse Audio. Either way, it works. Mike Jones says, there's a guy who did a audio-video focused distro of Linux. AV Linux, it was called. Last I heard of, he was porting it to MX Linux, but recently went back to making his own. AV Linux is, yeah, it's one of the options. Another one is Ubuntu Studio, if you want to have a self-contained Linux-based multimedia production environment. These multimedia production focused Linux distributions are a great choice if you want to get started for two main reasons, I think. And I also use them a lot when I was just like getting started. Actually, for many years I've used them. And I stopped using them after Cake Studio Live DVDs stopped being updated. And then I moved to Linux Mint. And then I moved to Manjaro. And now I moved to Linux or Arch Linux. But yes, Ubuntu Studio and AV Linux are a good choice for two reasons. First is they come pre-configured out of the box. So you are most likely to have a good experience with your system working properly, having good performance, low latency, hardware support for things you need, etc. So you don't need to waste time trying to get things to work because someone already did that for you. And the second reason is they come pre-packed with a lot of software. And that's great because you can just open the system menu, you browse it and you click on things that look interesting. And this is a great way of learning what tools are available. Just check them out and see what they do. I've been doing that a lot when I first installed Ubuntu Studio and later AV Linux as well. And that's a lot of fun. And later, when you really know what you need and what you want, you can use any Linux distribution and configure it for audio production and install all the software you want. I really like Arch Linux-based distributions because I think the Arch way is superior to Debian way. It's just better for me, at least. If you want absolutely stable, the most stable software you ever can get, then Debian is probably better. But I prefer to have fresh software and have updates as fast as possible so I can check out the new software, especially that part of what I do is reporting on new software, like what I do now. So I need to check it out before everyone else. David Martinez Marti says, I used Rose Garden around 15 years ago. I still use it when learning music for producing. I use Ardor. Miklos Nemeth says, what you do is so cool. What you do is cool. It is very needed, like water. Thinking instead of using industry standard shit. Oh, I'm sorry, industry standard shit. I didn't use Ardor until I watched your videos. Thanks. I'm glad I could do that for you. Yeah, I'm trying to communicate to the world that you don't need to buy industry standard software to be able to do music and sound effects and do good music and do professional sound effects. Like, you can do jobs for music production and sound effects and voice acting and audiobooks, anything you really want. Like, all the tools are really there. Sure, sometimes you're gonna have trouble if you need like Isotope RX because the tools are not that great. So Audacity is getting some nice spectral editing upgrades, I believe. So from the dreaded MuseGroup. So, well, there's been some issues. So I think I've read that the telemetry and like all the other nasty stuff that they were trying to get into Audacity is not going to be there if you compile from source by default, unless you turn it on. And of course, like software repositories of Linux distributions also like do take care to make sure you don't get spied on when you use Audacity. So I think maybe we have a little bit overreacted, but you know, you come to the open source software community and you behave like you don't understand what this open source software community really is about, people get angry. But I think maybe we should chill a little bit and look at Audacity once more. I mean, I'm using Audacity, so I'm using the old pre-MuseGroup version because that's what is shipped with Arch Linux, I believe. If not, we can check this out. Pacman Q? Audacity? I have version 2.4.1. I don't think that's updated by, you know, the MuseGroup. Yay. All right. Rafał Krupa says, thanks. Yeah, I know about plugins, but it would be great to have the full Guitarix UI page per track. Well, what you could do is... You know what? This could actually work. There's a crazy thing in Carla says called... If you go to settings, Carla settings, enable experimental features. Also, I should have had this enabled. Enable jack applications. And then you can add a jack application. And you can call this application Guitarix. And you can use NSM, which is Session Manager, because Guitarix supports NSM, because we saw in... How is this called? My goodness, these Esperanto names evade me. It was called Agardeo. Yes, the Agardeo Music Session Manager. You can see Guitarix is here, so it supports NSM. So you can use Carla Rack plugin in Ardor to load Guitarix program, standalone program inside of Carla Rack. I hope I'm not gonna. I hope I'm not going to crash anything, because I may need to restart my stream. But let's do it. Okay, where is Guitarix? Where are you? Where I spawn Guitarix? I think maybe it didn't work. Maybe it disappeared? Oh, no, there it is. Okay. And now we have Guitarix as a plugin. So I could put my voice through that. Like, I can mess with this. I'm not gonna save this patch, so no worries. So I will put this before limiter, because I don't want to hurt anybody's ears. Also, the routing is a bit complex here. Okay, here we have, let's do it like that. All right, we can insert it here. I'm gonna disconnect. Test. Testing. Now my voice is going through Guitarix. I don't know how does it sound. Oh yeah, it sounds like it's going through Guitarix. I can increase. Give it extra gain. Yeah, this is it. You see? Anti-fuzz. Nice. And this is how we can use Guitarix inside of your Ardor session. I hope this explains some things for you. Let me go back and see the chat. Ooh, okay. AV Linux MX Edition is supposed to have low latency for recording. Well, all of them are supposed to have low latency for recording. Last release of Rose Garden was a month ago, lol. Okay, so Rose Garden is actively developed. That's nice. High DGL says that's quite a high DSP usage though. Maybe. Thanks, Alpha. I'll try using M Audio using Carla. I'll still use Ubuntu Studio. The Arch. Install scripts defaults to Pipewire now, lol. Well, that's understandable. For desktop users and not music production or audio production, Pipewire is already probably good enough to replace Pulse Audio. One of the most weird and awesome things you can do with Pipewire, I think, is that you can use all your audio devices at the same time, including Bluetooth speakers and headphones, and you can like record... I can record from my Bluetooth headphones mic into Ardor using Pipewire. This is very silly and pointless, but also really cool. And I'm really excited for Pipewire. I think it's the best thing that will happen to the Linux audio ecosystem as a whole in this decade, probably, because it really is going to clean up the whole mess. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. All right. Yeah, so I've talked about Qtractor. Now let's move on to Jack. Jack is the audio server that is powering a lot of open source music production of Linux especially. And it has been powering mine for the better part of my life. As a Linux user, that is. Only recently, it started being replaced by Pipewire, which is acting like a Jack server. And there is a new release, a bunch of new releases. I'm gonna read my notes here. Now, the Jack helper programs have been unified between Jack 1 and Jack 2 because there's like two not fully compatible Jack server versions. And the tools like the Jack Connect program and Jack LSP, which lists all your ports, Jack IO delay, which is used to measure latency with a patch cord, which I was doing yesterday, and I'll be doing more because I'm testing audio interfaces. And this is part of the stock that is waiting for that, and another device is arriving by the end of February. These programs were shipped in the Jack server package up until this point. Now they have been separated into Jack example tools package. So when I updated my Arch Linux installation, I was missing the programs. Synth Apprentice Nathan V says, I'm late to the party, what did I miss? Well, you can rewatch it later. Don't miss any more, just come along for the ride. Yeah, so now these tools are no longer part of the Jack main packages. Before they were packaged with Jack 2 and Jack 1 because they were different for each one, so they had to be packaged. Now, there's Jack 2 and Jack 1, just the server, and Jack example tools have the tools which are compatible with both. And that change was motivated by Pipewire development. Oh, there is a note about that. We only needed Pipewire to come along and force us to do it. After years of them seeing no changes, Jack 2 example clients and tools have finally been synced with Jack 1. I mentioned the need to merge sync the Jack 1 and Jack 2 headers and tools quite some months ago, but there wasn't much progress on that until very recently. Yeah, for an explanation, Jack distributions like Arch that do not typically split packages, hypothetically, installing Pipewire Jack would remove Jack 2 and replace it with Pipewire's version. But tools like Jack Connect, Jack Wait, etc. are part of Jack 2 package tool, not Pipewire Jack. Installing Pipewire Jack would hypothetically remove these tools. There are quite a few setups out there that rely on them, so a solution was needed for this. Yeah, that's interesting. I actually did not experience this, either when I was on Manjaro or Arch Linux. But if that's the case, then yeah, it's a problem. Because I couldn't measure latency using Jack I/O delay, and I need that because there is no better tool to do that. At least I don't know of any. This is the gold standard for measuring latency. Pipewire developers do this to benchmark their software. All right, so these are now merged, and there is also a new session manager maintenance release. Interesting. Ooh, that's an extra one. Yep, nice. And there's also new releases for Jack 1 and Jack 2. Lots and lots of stuff. Blah, blah, blah. That's previous year, so I'm not gonna bother. Alrighty, we are getting to the main dish of this live stream update. I'm gonna read the chat. Miklos Nemeth says, thank you, I think that open source reached usable or even professional state. Audacious is my favorite, the only one handling endless amounts of audio, although I thought it was only a toy. Audacious is a nice music player. I use it a bit. So I really don't listen to music from audio files anymore. I mostly listen to albums from YouTube. Andrew McKenzie asks, do you bother with Wine and running any Windows VST on Linux, or do you only do native Linux plugins? Only native Linux stuff. When I switched to Linux, I just dropped all the VST plugins I've learned in the previous years, and I decided to go and start with a clean slate, learn the native stuff, and it took us some time, but I think it's for the better. Of course, I understand when someone has invested into proprietary plugins and has spent some money on them and wants to get them running. There are tools like YaBridge and other things. A guy named Robert from my community is developing that. I believe that's him. Or was it something else? If I'm confusing some people, please, I apologize. All right, let's go on. And last but not least, we have Surge XT 1.0. So the Surge synthesizer has a new release, and that's a big one because I'm gonna just read the announcement. Our next release of Surge, aptly named Surge XT, made a fundamental architectural break with prior Surge versions up to 1.9, porting to the Juice framework and changing the plugin ID while adding a variety of exciting new features. Here's what's new. Note, this means Surge XT and Surge are separate plugins. You can have both of them installed on your system and use them they are not interchangeable. They are incompatible with each other. You can have them both, and you can still have Surge in your old projects, and that's not gonna break anything. But you now install Surge XT, which is a separate new thing, and you can move on and, I wonder if it's possible to export patches from Surge to import them to Surge XT. Maybe there is a way to do that, because I'm sure that Surge XT has more capabilities, not less. So I think Surge's patches should fit in Surge XT feature palette. I'm gonna take a short while. Bethesda, don't sue me. Plugin names. New names are Surge XT and Surge XT Effects. Similarly, the user data folder is now named Surge XT. Please consult the manual for a migration guide from Surge 1.9 or earlier. Okay, so there is some information about that. Port to Juice. There are innumerable changes, including basically a rewrite of the entire plugin layer and re-implementing all of the widgets and UI components. It's pretty crazy that it looks pretty similar to the previous version. That must have been like a lot of work. I can't imagine rewriting a piece of software and making it like so close to the original. Like I couldn't resist changing all this stuff. Inu Blast asks, what is the best drum plugins for rock style? Drum Gizmo. Drum Gizmo, my dude, is what you need. Maybe I'll turn off the color inversion. I have made a live stream where I showed how to use Drum Gizmo in Ardor, so search for that and you will be good to go. Back to Surge XT. Although we don't distribute an LV2 plugin, Juice LV2 port project branch allows Linux users to build LV2 if they wish, and it has almost all the features of the VST free version, excluding the features VST supports and LV2 does not. That's a good thing. For the longest time, LV2 version was not possible, like was not working. Wasn't working because like there was some vastly problematic incompatibility of how Surge was made and how LV2 works, and that led to patch corruption, which was really nasty. So I was forced to use the VST free version. I prefer LV2 wherever I can because LV2 is a truly open format and VST free, like even though it is GPL licensed, it comes from Steinberg and they killing VST2 and forcing all the developers to move on was a really painful thing. So I prefer to really use an open format because, like, sure, it's open source, but I don't know, maybe they'll still find a way to kick people to using VST4 when that releases next decade or whatever. I don't know. I'm just soured for Steinberg, even though I'm looking up to getting their an audio interface from them to test it with Linux and see how it performs. Port to Juice also allows us to provide a standalone version of Surge XT. Oh, nice. So you can run it as a program, not as a plugin. Patch navigation. Implement the system to mark patches as favorite. Implement a searchable database for all the patches. Can now choose a default patch that will be loaded upon instantiating Surge XT. Oh, nice. You can make your own init patch, I guess. Modulation. Modulation list overlay. Oh yeah, that's nice. Provides a complete overview of all assigned modulations in a patch. You can mute or remove modulations too, blah, blah, blah. That's just cool. Formula modulator, as promised in Surge 1.9. Yes, I've been doing a live stream and I showed this, and we made some pretty crazy, weird stuff with that. You can basically type in math and it creates modulation functions from that. It's very interesting. Enabled by embedding Lua Jet in Surge. Lua is a programming scripting language, real-time scripting language, and Jet is just-in-time compiler, which means it compiles the code right when you need it to rerun, I guess. Formula modulator enables you to do too many things to list here, so we have added a number of tutorials to showcase at least some of the things that are unavailable possible. Yeah, that's pretty unique. Okay, I'm not going to read all of that because there's too much. You can read all of it yourself if you are interested in that. There's new keyboard shortcuts. Micro tuning. Tuning interface from Tuning Workbench Synth is now implemented in Surge XT. Right click to tune button and choose Tuning Editor, then Explore. It's even better than TVWS, containing lots of more new views. Jabba jabba ja. Added a new tripole filter type inspired by Ian Fritz's Thriller filter. Greatly expanded the wave shaping. The tripole filter sounds interesting. I've been testing that on the live stream. Some really interesting wet resonances there. Greatly expanded the wave shaping section. Increased the number of wave shaping types from 5 to 43. Yeah, there's a huge amount of wave shaping functions available now. Harmonic extension, noise, trigonometric wave folders, classic wave folders, and much more. Filters and wave shapers are now deactivatable by double-clicking the filter type icon, wave shaper curve, or a right-click context menu option. Effects. Surge now has 4 send scene insert and global insert effect slots. There's twice as many slots for effects right now. Add a new spring reverb effect from Joting Chowdhury. Hey, that's the guy from Chow Tape. I think I haven't heard this one. Oh, maybe I did. I think I did test it on the live stream. Precision option. Whoa, functional differences. Modifies where user content is stored. When you start a plugin the first time, it will create an empty directory structure for you. You can simply copy your contents from your Surge folder to your Surge XT folder. Ah. So they say how you can like migrate your patches. So it should load the old patches, I guess. Auto changes various fixes, blah, blah, blah. There is a huge amount of changes. My goodness. Well, I think what we all should do is just go to downloads and download Surge XT 1.0.0. Alrighty, this is all the news I wanted to cover. Thank you for joining me for this quick and, yeah, it was quick, but not so short, I am afraid. Quick live stream. How long are we going? How long have we been streaming? Almost an hour. Okay. Alrighty. Yes, so some exciting new things released. Namely, like, notably, the Surge XT release, I think, is a really nice thing to have. The new jack stuff, and there's like also Pipewire updates coming along with that, and Laborejo software suite, and Qtractor and Q stuff plugins. Yeah, I'm gonna read the chat one more time and sunset this stream. Fotis and stuff says, yeah, I was forced to release my Maze sampler plugin as VST free. When I move to Juice, I hope I'd be able to make an LV2 in the future. Yeah, I hope so. Is your plugin open source, by the way? I am very interested in any samplers because we don't have many. There is a sampler called Short Circuit that is being worked on as a part of the by the Surge team, I believe, but it's not ready for a release yet. So Rered says, I run Ubuntu 2004 and I installed the studio repository for audio, but the DAWs I use are Reaper and Harrison Mixbus, non-open source. Yeah, I try to stay open source as much as possible. Harrison Mixbus is pretty much a fork of Ardor. A proprietary fork of Ardor. It's Ardor with a specific analog style GUI and specific plugins and analog emulations. I haven't used Harrison Mixbus, but I think you could pretty much achieve the same sound if you just dropped a bunch of Air Windows plugins in your session, including the bus and console ones, which can like replace the digital summing with an emulation of analog summing. If you are the kind of person who can hear the difference. I'm certainly not. I'm an EDM head. Synth Apprentice Nathan V says, I wonder how much of all of this is going to make it into the next LTS of Ubuntu Studio. LTS stands for long-term support, and this means, well, Ubuntu Studio releases cyclically. Ubuntu Studio releases cyclically, like Debian and Ubuntu. And it's like, what, once every 4 years there's an LTS release? Or no, there's once every 2 years, and it's supported for like 6 years? I don't know. Fotis and stuff says, no, it's not open source right now. The Juice one will be, though. Okay. Huge fan of Air Windows, by the way. Oh, yeah. Chris has made some really awesome plugins, and the people who are into tape emulations say that his emulations are one of the best ones. Also, Chris has recently joined my community chat and has been graciously sharing some unique things like his production drums, which with his permission I've uploaded to Audio Music Artifacts. Which is also a site where you can find free and open source resources for music production. So I guess things ripped from music, from games, is licensing gray area, so non-free. Yeah. That was a weird transition. Alrighty. TechZite asks, Anfa, what's the best organ VST for Linux? It's called SetB3. It's a Hammond organ emulator, an exquisite one. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me. This stream has passed 1 hour mark. I didn't expect it's gonna go as long, but like, yeah, that's the max I wanted to go. If you would like to meet other people using free and open source software and Linux for music production and sound design and other stuff, then you can check out my chat, my community chat, at chat.anfa.xyz. Just today, I've implemented authentication. You can log in with your Google account and Facebook account, and no, Facebook doesn't work for some reason, but you can use like a bunch of accounts, GitHub, GitLab, Twitter works. Yeah. So I hope that's going to allow way more people to use this, because the chat is based on Rocket Chat. It's an open source and hosted by me, self-hosted chat service, which is similar to Slack, and it's much better than Discord. But there is also Discord, which is bridged to that server. So if you go to chat.anfa.xyz, in the homepage, there is a description about what the hell is going on, and you can also click a link and go to Discord if you prefer that. But as Discord is proprietary and not entirely in the spirit of open sourceness, I am more recommending Rocket Chat. But yay. Okay, and also huge thanks to all the people who are supporting my work financially, because without the guys on Patreon and Libraio, I would not be able to stay up nights. It's it's almost 2 a.m. Stay late up night and do these videos for you, because I would have to do other stuff. So yeah, and if any of you watching would like to join these cool guys and support me as well, you can go to patreon.com/anfa or to libraio.com/anfa and support me with a monthly donation. Even, the smallest donations are very welcome, because this adds up and things are happening. Yeah. with all that being said, I am going to say goodnight. Yeah. Whew. I'm tempted to get a third coffee in the night, but that's a bad idea. Okay,